Hey, what's up, Raw and Real Entrepreneurs, wherever you are in the world? I hope you are having an amazing day. Welcome to Raw and Real Entrepreneurship, the show that helps inspire you to launch and scale your business. And today I'm going to be talking to a co-founder and CEO of a startup that has already helped 25,000 entrepreneurs start their business with hardly any investment. And her interview is so inspiring. She's going to talk about living in her parents' basement, investing everything she had, walking away from a successful career, and lessons learned. She has been voted one of the top 30 under 30 entrepreneurs in Canada. And she is just rising to the top and dominating. And her compelling narrative features a transition to entrepreneurship from consulting. And she took a bold leap in the startup realm, venturing into the competitive landscape of e-commerce. Her personal experiences navigating the challenges of launching her own business finally led her to co-found Blanka. And in less than 2 years, it has become one of the top performing apps in the Shopify app store. I mean, she is on fire. And before I get into the interview, I want to say that today's show is brought to you by my new venture, the Pause.ai. So if you are a woman who is in perimenopause, menopause, go to the app store, check it out, download the app. We have introductory pricing. We are going to help you navigate with precision perimenopause and menopause using Gen AI gamification. And we integrate with the Apple Watch. We have other devices to follow. It's absolutely awesome. We are getting 5-star reviews. So check it out, the Pause app in the App Store. So let's get into today's show with the one and only Kaylee Lieffers, who is the co-founder and CEO of Blanka.
This is Raw and Real Entrepreneurship, the show that brings the no-nonsense truth of what is required to start, grow, and scale your business. I am your host, Susan Sly.
Well, Kaylee, welcome to Raw and Real Entrepreneurship. First and foremost, everyone knows I love featuring Canadian entrepreneurs. So when I have Canadians on, we do just at the end play some Canadian rapid fire. So just be ready for that. It's all good. It's all good. Let me, first and foremost, I want to jump right in. I was all over the website. I was looking at what it is you're doing. You're already winning awards, top 30 under 30, disruptor. Were you always an entrepreneur? Did you come out of the womb and it's I'm starting a business?
That's such a funny question. I love that. Yeah, I mean, I guess to give a bit of backstory on my background, I'm originally from Saskatoon, which you and I shared before we started recording. My parents are both very entrepreneurial, so I think I come from that environment where they always worked for themselves and very free-spirited, I'd say. So they were OG snowbirds. They moved my sister and I to Mexico when we were really young, homeschooled us, just had a very different upbringing than I'd say your common kind of Canadian-esque lifestyle. And so I think just having been thrown into very different lifestyles, having entrepreneurial parents, I never really saw as linear of a path as maybe other people. And so definitely entrepreneurship was always something that was on my radar. I think where I struggled was kind of convincing myself that I didn't have good ideas or that I didn't have what it takes to the tools or the experience to be an entrepreneur. And so I think in some ways that maybe held me back a little bit in my earlier years. And it was only after doing corporate and being an executive at a few startups did I get that confidence. But I think, going back, if I could tell myself something, it'd be no, just, rip off the Band-Aid and do it. I think that's been a big learning and realization for me.
This begs me to ask this question because a lot of people struggle with imposter syndrome. Mm-hmm. And I had Gregory Shepard on the show, and Gregory is he's on the autism spectrum. He sold 12 businesses totaling over $1 billion. And Kaylee, he said the most incredible thing in his show that people, when they're children, if they've been discounted, especially discounted for whether they were bullied or they were different or whatever it was, they always feel like they have to prove themselves. And so it's this 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I've got to prove. And then it's wait, I'm not worthy. So how did imposter syndrome show up for you? Because you said like, you didn't know, do I have good ideas? And there's a huge difference between taking an idea that you're contemplating, even writing it down, and actually executing on it. So imposter syndrome, how did it show up for you? And what do you recall as one of those first key steps you took to overcome it? Because everyone listening all over the world, this is like a big question they have.
Oh my goodness, I don't know if I have one single answer for that. I mean, even looking at kind of that concept of imposter syndrome, you as an adult, you want to target where it came from or what caused it. And I can't even point to my parents or something. My parents are incredible. I'm so close with them. I think it's probably just part of me personality and feeling like, you know, I knew growing up being homeschooled in another country where I had to relearn language that I felt like I was maybe at a bit of a disadvantage to my peers and that I was playing catch up. And so even, making a transition to university, I felt like I was a bit of the odd one out. And then came to realize actually homeschooling was a way better way to go to university because then I didn't need to go to any of my classes because I could just self-teach. And so it ended up being a great thing. I think I probably got that confidence in university where I realized that I was on par with people who grew up in a more traditional way, and I got better grades than most of them at the end of the day, and I landed a great job. And so I think it was just about like slowly grinding away and like those small micro achievements that all kind of laddered up to something bigger. But, there's been so many times in my career where that confidence kind of gets questioned again. And that imposter syndrome plays such a role in my life still. I'm leading a team of 30 and the company's crushing it, but still I question if I can get us to the next stage. I'm wondering that all the time. Or another example, and this is quite a personal one. My husband and I, we built the company together with a partner. And so we invested everything into the company, moved back in with parents to do so. And only in the last year have we moved out on our own again, which is crazy. Like we're full blown adults. And that experience, I'm like, I feel like I have imposter syndrome having my own house, which is crazy. And so does he. So I think it does still show up in different ways. And I have to check myself a little bit, but I do think it's humbling. And I think it actually makes me a better leader with my team as well. So there's a lot of pieces there.
There are, I mean, moving back in with your parents, and I get that, like, to be able to like have to make those pivots and say, I'm all in. It's like Ponce de Leon, I'm burning the boats, and like, this is it. We are going, this is what we're doing. And it's huge. I'll tell you a side story. So when I was like 3 years old, and if you've been listening for a long time, you might have heard this story before, but when I was 3 years old, my mother kidnapped me, and we were living on like social assistance in Halifax. And I remember when I got to eventually go live with my dad, Kaylee, having a dishwasher. Every time I would start the dishwasher, I would just feel like safe or something. And then I never had a washing machine at home. So by the time, I think when my husband and I got married, I was in my 20s, and we had like an actual washer and dryer, I had imposter syndrome because I'd never had one. Like I didn't grow up with one. We either hand washed our clothes or we went to a laundromat. So I didn't know. And I so get that. And to sometimes, I was even talking to my husband this morning and saying, like just stepping back and just no matter what's going on as an entrepreneur, it's like stepping back and going, I'm grateful for what I have. And it's that foundation. Is that when you moved in with your parents, where was the company then? Because there's always this inflection point where it's like you're being tested. Like I'm either all in or I'm not, but where was the company?
We were revenue generating at that point, and we had two other employees, but we weren't paying ourselves salary. So there was traction. We saw some sort of light at the end of the tunnel, or in the middle of the tunnel, so to speak. But there was still a lot of work to be done. And this was pre-fundraising. You know, for us, when we did eventually fundraise, that was after we had a lot more revenue. We were actually paying ourselves. I wasn't comfortable fundraising until I really knew we had traction. So the company was in like an exciting place, I would say. It was such an exciting time, but we were still doing side jobs, consulting, that sort of thing, to make sure that we had, you know, some money coming in. But it was definitely a different time than where we're at now.
How did you get your first customers?
So the way we got our first customers was really interesting. We started scoping the concept of Blanka and the MVP of it in 2021. And my CTO, who's my co-founder, Doug, started building. And during the build phase, it's like there's not a lot anyone else can do, right? You're like maybe testing if there's an MVP up, but it was kind of like a waiting game. And I had no patience to wait until I could test the platform. And so I started just creeping online and trying to figure out, it's like, hey, how can we build a bit of a community? How can we build a bit of momentum in advance of launching? And I ended up discovering on Facebook that there was just like so many different groups of people who were really passionate about makeup or starting their own private label line, but they were doing it the old fashioned way of like ordering all this inventory from suppliers and like printing their own labels and shipping it out of their apartment. And so I was like, okay, well, these are totally the people that we're targeting, because Blanka is effectively automating the end-to-end process of that. And so I created like an invite only exclusive Facebook group and made all my friends join it, so it looked like there was actually people in it. And then I started spamming these groups of people, inviting them to our invite only exclusive group and offering them first 3 months free on Blanka. And it worked. Like the group grew, and then people started like engaging in it and asking questions, and I had to figure out how to, engage back. And those ended up being our first customers. So it was a very guerrilla hacky way to build a community that still exists today.
You know what though, like there are so many people, Kaylee, looking for shortcuts, and it drives me crazy because I have a very abundant mindset, but the work is the work is the work, right? Like even for the pause, spinning up this company, and it's like, yes, we have a private Facebook group, and yes, we're doing like we have and just for the pause, so women founded, women funded, 13 women wrote a check to start this company, including me. And so we have like all of our investors are ambassadors, and they're like inviting friends to this Facebook group. They're, and again, it's the same thing, but the work is the work is the work. And every day it's like waking up and going, okay, what opportunities can I seize today? Like incredible. So you're working, you're like getting these customers, you're like working, you're like living with your parents and your husband is all in. Like what was there an inflection point ever where you had to have a conversation with him that was like, we're doing this or we're doing this? Like, yeah.
It's actually really funny how the inflection point happened, because it kind of happened naturally. So Adam was working as an executive at a really successful brand in Vancouver, and we were supposed to get married in 2020, but the wedding got postponed to 2021. We all know why. Mm-hmm. And our plan was always actually we were going to go traveling and spend a bit of time traveling before we like settled down and started a family. And over the course of 2020 to 2021, we built Blanka, and really it was a side project. And so during that time frame, the plan was always that he would leave his job and we'd go traveling. And so our wedding kind of accidentally became the inflection point of when he left his role, I was consulting, we were building Blanka, we got married, we started traveling and building Blanka at the same time. And after a year of traveling, we kind of like ended up back at my parents' place because we had come back from traveling and we never left. And so it's funny because there was never like this moment where it's like, okay, we're going to quit our jobs, or okay, we're moving back in with our parents. Okay, we're doing this. It happened organically. And I think that that's just like a really beautiful way for it to have happened for us. And it's worked out really well. So it's interesting because like the story sounds so clean when I look back and reflect, but obviously at the time it felt a bit manic, as it always does in a startup.
Well, and it's wonderful to have a partner who is so supportive and like gets what it is required to be an entrepreneur, because the rewards are huge and the risk is huge. And we hear the stories like Jeff Bezos sleeping on the floor at Amazon, or the same story with Elon Musk. And it's just, you can look at, there's a saying that goes, you only see the glory, you don't know the story. As you were getting Blanka spun up, can you think of a moment, Kaylee, when it was, I call them WKM's wall kicking moments? You had a wall kicking moment, and it caused you to either like look in the mirror and ask some different questions, or like really take a look at the company and say, is this the trajectory we're supposed to be going on?
I remember there's a couple things. I mean, I remember pretty clearly it was in 2022. So we were about a year and a half into the business, and I'd already started to feel a little bit burnt out. And I kind of broke emotionally a little bit, to be
Mhm.
honest. And I remember I was in the back of an Uber, and I was emotional. I was like, this feels really hard. Like, what are we doing? We're putting everything into it. And, and that was kind of the moment where it's like, we are getting traction, but we're like reinvesting everything in. We don't have a lot of capacity to test because we don't have the capital. And so we're just growing like insy wincy pieces every month. And it was great growth for where we were at, but it just felt like we were stagnant in some ways because we were limited with the resourcing that we had. And I think that realization where I was trying to do everything, and I didn't have like some of the mentorship and coaching that I think would have been really helpful at the time, where it was like, okay, why don't we explore how we can get that support? And so in summer of 22, we kind of like became more vocal about what we were building, because I felt like we were building in silence a little bit. And I met with a ton of amazing investors and some accelerators, and I realized like, wow, there really is a community here to support.
Mhm.
And that changed everything, I would say, in terms of, being able to lean on other founders who are going through the crap with you and joining an accelerator. We joined Forum Ventures Accelerator, and that was like, I'd say, the pivotal moment for our business in a lot of ways, because they helped us think through fundraising and the next kind of level of our business, and gave us incredible mentors. One of our mentors and advisors, who's a former CMO of L'Oreal, is now part of our team. And so I wouldn't have been able to do that if I was just doing it on my own, building on my own. And I think that mini breakdown that I had to be that kind of pivotal moment to be like, hey, no, it's okay to ask for help, and there is help available. I just didn't really know how to find it at the time.
Yeah, that's it, and that's huge. That because the road in entrepreneurship can feel really lonely, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we don't have to be alone. And the other piece around this is about women-led startups. So in the United States, the statistic is less than 2% of all tech startups have at least one female founder. It's very, very small. And as women who are founders, when we find that group, that tribe, we realize there's so many women in that ecosystem, whether it's for patent law, whether it's for, accounting, whatever it is, that are so willing to help and support, which is huge. And for people listening around the world, there are, to my knowledge, there are great accelerators in almost every country that this show goes to. And the piece around it, to Kaylee's point, is that it is tremendous for the company. Now, for someone who's never experienced an accelerator, because we have a lot of people who listen who want to start a business, what was that experience like for you? Like, what are some specifics that happened in the accelerator?
Yeah, so I mean, every accelerator is different. So I think understanding what you're looking to get out of the accelerator, there's, incubators that are really early stage where you just have an idea and they're going to help you kind of get it to market. Whereas there's something that's more along like growth accelerators that might help you with sales or go to market, or in our case, fundraising. And so I think really understanding like what you're looking for. And the second is like vetting that accelerator through other founders. There's so many skeleton shadow accelerators out there that are like trying to take equity or get you to pay. And usually that's not normal. And so I would really, really caution folks to do their due diligence on the accelerator. In terms of my takeaways is that I think accelerators, you get out what you put in, frankly. That's what it is. And I think people just think it's like, oh, I got into accelerator, I'm good to go. And it's like, no, you have to show up to the workshops, you have to do the work, you have to network with all the other founders and the coordinators. And I think like putting the work in and not being lazy, which like you kind of touched on earlier, is such a big facet of success. And so for us, it's been incredible. Like the network's been huge. And, I'm random asks that I have, we're doing a big campaign or we're hiring for a role, I'll post it in the Slack group and I'm getting constant responses because then when people are posting, I'm responding too. So I think an accelerator is a great way to take some of that loneliness away that you alluded to.
Oh, that's helpful. Yeah. And thank you. I love what you said. It's like, you need to focus on what the outcome is, right? Mm-hmm. And that's key. I'm so curious, here you are like confident, like you've got it together, sharing the things you've overcome. What's a skill you would say you've developed now in the last 4 years that maybe surprised you?
That surprised me. That's such a great question. I think I've had to level up and kind of let go, and that surprised me. I had an interview with somebody yesterday and they were like, for a more senior role, and they made a comment, they're like, I'm sure it's really hard for you to give this role away because Blanka is your baby and all this stuff. And I was kind of like, actually, in my mind, I was like, actually, that's not true at all. I mean, yes, we built this baby from scratch and I was so deep in the weeds. But I think over the last few years, I've learned how to let go and really like trust other people and know that 95% of the time they're going to make the right decision. And we just have to believe in that. And the 5% where they screw up, like that's just going to happen naturally. And so I think that's been a skill that I've had to hone. But I don't think that skill would have been valuable day one of Blanka, because then I wouldn't have been in the weeds and I wouldn't have been building and really kind of like, rolling up my sleeves. And so I think that it's been a really interesting experience to upskill myself as the company grows. But that also plays into this kind of concept of, am I good enough and can I keep upskilling to the point that Blanka needs when we become that $1 billion business? And so it's kind of contradictory and something that I'm working through. But I think so far, I feel as though I see a team that's very empowered. I'm very proud of the team that we have. And it's because I can let go for the most part and just trust them.
It's so interesting you said that, because there's this whole concept of CEOs who golf, right? Like and when you're starting a startup, you're wearing like every single hat. And I just went through something recently myself. So we onboarded a new CTO and she's incredible. She's like 28 years old, and such a badass. And I had been prior to this, like, almost micromanaging every single tech meeting. And my background is a different form of AI. So like, it's not even my zone of genius, the kind of AI we're using now, Gen AI versus like computer vision AI, without getting super nerdy. But I was like micromanaging Kaylee, and she very nicely said, it's okay. Like not in an insulting way. It's like, because she knew that, over the course of my decades in entrepreneurship, like that I was holding on really tightly. And so she took like 16 hours of meetings off my schedule.
I love that.
So I could focus on business development, being the CEO, setting the vision. And to your point, like trust isn't something that comes easily to me, but once I trust you, like I'm going to take a bullet for you. Yeah. But it was that trust and that letting go. Right. And suddenly my schedule is freeing up and I'm like, oh, like, wow, that's amazing.
That's amazing. That's a privilege of hiring really good people.
Yeah. And have you had to let someone go?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. We've made some hiring mistakes for sure, and learned from them. And it's kind of a cliche, but we've definitely taken the approach of like hire slow, fire fast. And I think over the last year or two, another skill I've gotten better at is like very direct feedback. I'm not sandwiching things, and I'm not like, what is it, like the feedback sandwich where it's something nice, something critical, and then something nice again. So I think like, we're catching things early, giving feedback and making decisions quickly, but letting go of somebody totally sucks. And there's been circumstances where we've waited too long, unfortunately, and I've seen where it's kind of hurt the business a little bit, but it's just a natural part of running a company. I think you're going to make hiring mistakes regardless.
What advice would you give to the listeners now, knowing what you know now around hiring?
About hiring? So, I mean, in terms of like our process, we've baked out like a very like clear process where my preference is to do referral hiring as much as possible. I want somebody that's been recommended to me. If we aren't so lucky as to get referred a candidate, we're very thorough. So we do initial screenings through just like questionnaires. I'm so hyper obsessed about like spelling, the way you articulate, the way you communicate on email has to be hyper professional. And so if there's a spelling mistake, you're out. And I think that like that's one piece. We always do screening interviews. We do take-home exercises. We do a really in-depth career, like backwards reflection cadence. We always have an in-person meeting with our team. There's so many steps to our hiring process. So I think like the advice I would give is build a process that works for you and test different things. And go slowly and get reference checks, not from the references they give you. That's what we try and backdoor reference checks as much as possible.
That's phenomenal. And I love the piece about like the looking, like a retro on the career and seeing like how self-actualized is that individual. One thing I do is I put Easter eggs in it. So like I'll throw in somewhere like randomly like, oh, and when you send your email, share your favorite food. Like if they don't do it, they're not paying attention, and they're not even going to go to any next form of step at all.
Yeah, I totally agree. And maybe this is me being a savage because I came from consulting and business school where it's like, send a thank you email after the interviews. Like those types of things are crazy to me. We're hiring a head of sales right now, and the candidates who are standing out to me are the ones who are pestering me on LinkedIn because I'm like, hey, well, you're a salesperson. You should bother me on LinkedIn for this job. So the ones who are just submitting their applications passively, I'm like, no.
No, that's not, because then you're going to have to always have someone telling them exactly what they need to do. And do you find that there is a difference with candidates just based on, I guess, like, background, years of experience? Like, what is something for you? And I'm just so curious about this, that, are you seeing any trends?
So it's interesting. I'll speak a little bit about like the kind of the company culture that we're trying to build and how that's important to what we're creating. Because I came from a consulting background and my initial few years in startups were very intense, I have a very intense work ethic. And we've now started to hire people who have very similar work ethics as well. And so I'm not going to sugarcoat, we're not a 9-to-5. We're working and we're delivering a lot, and we have really high expectations. And I'd say we've leveled up in the last year in those expectations because we've started to hire some folks that I used to work with, and we all know how to work together, and we're kind of changing the cadence about how we deliver. And I've seen some members of our team struggle, mainly like the more junior Gen Z employees who probably had one job before us and weren't coached properly. And now we have to re-coach them a little bit. And some of them are thriving under it and some of them aren't. But I'd say like for the type of business we're trying to build, like I'm not building a West Coast Vancouver startup where you're going to Kids Beach at 5 p.m. Like you're working and you're probably replying to me on the weekends too. And that's just a reality. And some people don't love it. And I'm totally okay with that. Yeah. But I think that that's starting to reflect like some of the folks that we're hiring and who we look for. And then also some of the companies that we hire from, because there's certain companies in Canada that we know have coached more junior staff in a better way. What I would say is where we struggle the most is like those intermediary roles where it's like, you know enough to be dangerous. You have like 5 years of experience. Those folks, I think they know so much and have so much experience and then can't deliver as well. And so we have the most challenge in like that kind of intermediary level. So we're still trying to figure it out. We have not perfected hiring, but we're getting close and our team's amazing now.
It sounds like it. I mean, I love what you said about leveling up and shifting expectations. And I know even for myself, in my previous startup, we were in a very competitive labor market a few years ago. And COVID absolutely changed the game of expectations. Like, people were working remotely, people didn't want to come into an office. And for what we were building, that wasn't going to work. But we were very gracious, let's put it this way, in our compensation packages and our expectations because, it was such a competitive environment. Now we're in a more like, I would say, a more traditional labor market where there are multiple candidates. And so I'm shifting now, even my expectations, because like one of my friends who's a company I invested in, Jen Pelka, she's the CEO of Une Femme Wines. And she said, I just need my employees to be 90% of what I do and they will outperform because she's like, no one's going to outwork me. Like they're just not. Right.
I love that. I can relate. I can totally relate.
Yeah. We're entrepreneurs. That's just what we do. Right. Like,
it's also our business. And I understand that. And one of our values is we all act like owners. I'm really keen on making sure everybody has equity in the business so they feel like owners. But I do at the end of the day realize like this is my company. And so I know why I'm on at 4 a.m. and other people aren't. And that's totally okay. Like I have sympathy there.
Yeah. And us too. So we have an ESOP and it drives me crazy when someone says your company. I'm like, you have equity in this company. So it's our company. Like that is a huge red flag for me. Like, you're like, you made, that's a whole other tangent. Let's talk about Blanka. Like when I look at what you're doing, it's very interesting because it's a company that is allowing everyday people to be able to start businesses. And so like talk about the company, the offering, and really who is your ideal customer now and has that shifted?
Yeah, for sure. So you really nailed it. Blanka is a platform that makes it really easy to launch beauty lines. And so we've built an online digital platform with hundreds and hundreds of super high quality North American made products that span everything from makeup to skincare, hair care, men's, and virtually anyone can create an account. They can upload a logo and brand the products and then start selling them. They can sell them on an online store or in a physical retail store, on Amazon, wherever they want. And they never have to touch the inventory. So when they get orders from a customer, we'll essentially customize the products and we ship it directly to their end customer. And so we're making it a lot easier than the traditional approach of starting a product line where you have to find the suppliers, and then you have to get everything branded, and then you have to hold all the inventory. We're streamlining that whole piece. In terms of our customer profile, there's a few types of customers that really show up on Blanka. A brand new entrepreneur who wants to get started is a great example of one that you touched on. We work with a lot of existing brands. So a beauty brand that wants to test out maybe a hair care line or a serum line in a low risk environment. We work with a lot of existing brands doing that, even apparel companies. We work with a lot of beauty professionals, so makeup artists, med spas. And we also work with creators and influencers. So what's been really cool about our platform is that there's a lot of different use cases for it and different folks who see the benefit of building their beauty lines. So yeah, it's been a really fun business to build just because at the end of the day, we're enabling entrepreneurship. And that's something I've been so passionate about my whole career.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like I'm so excited about it, like for like several reasons. One, because you're a fellow Canadian girl, number one. Number two, like you're getting this amazing traction. And when I think about, I have 4 kids, Kaylee, and
Okay, I didn't know that.
yeah,
I love that.
I'm in my 50s, but when I was in my early 20s, I was a homeless single mom. And so I got a job like in Toronto, like working in like a massive health club, and I had a like sales team and so on. But like I had to figure out a way to be the mom that I wanted to be and also have the income that I wanted to have. So I ended up like starting a business, like a side hustle from home. And I love that you're providing that opportunity because I just see that, like, to your point, we can have influencers, we can have, and influencer, let's define it. It's not like you're necessarily Kim Kardashian. Influencers could be that woman who lives in a town like Kingston, Ontario, where I used to live, and
Totally.
maybe has like 3,000 Instagram followers, but they're highly engaged.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
can you think of a success story you'd like to share about one of your customers?
Totally. I mean, we have tons of them. One of my favorite stories is Vanessa. She started her brand out of university, actually, and she was a varsity cheerleader and wanted a makeup that was sweat proof, or wanted to create a line that really targeted like athletic lifestyle active women. And so she started her line of sweat proof foundation, found Blanka. Lo and behold, our formulas are sweat proof. I didn't know that at the time, but it's great. And she built something really significant. She built partnerships with the NFL, with different cheerleading teams, built multiple distribution lines. And she did it from scratch. Like she had no idea what she was doing. She was a one-person show at the beginning. And that's just one of the many stories that I think are so cool about building on our platform, because it's not expensive to get started. And so there's like low barriers to entry to get started, but then you have to put in the work and build your business. It's like anything. And so, yeah, that's a story that really stands out for me.
I love that. And it's that possibility. We're living in such an amazing time to be an entrepreneur. And like you said, the barrier to entry is so small, but the common thing is the work.
Yes.
Rebecca Zung, who I've had on the show a couple of times, a really good girlfriend of mine, she said the last time she was on the show, the difference is around execution. And like that's another hiring piece. I've hired people who are great. They sound great, they interview great and everything, but they can execute, but they just choose not to. They'd rather
I
like
know.
just kind of,
I
yeah, that drives me bananas. Like get in there and get gritty.
this might be a really unpopular opinion, but I'm gonna say it anyways, is I refuse to hire consultants. So anybody who came from like the Bains or the McKinseys or the BCGs,
Nope.
I'm an ex-consultant myself. So literally I'm calling the kettle black, but I think because they've only done like strategy building decks and can't execute, so we refuse to hire from there.
No, us too. We also don't have any advisors who aren't investors. So if you see advisor on our website, they're investors. I don't give away equity in the company. It just doesn't work like that. It doesn't matter how many followers you have, what your background is, like get skin in the game, because then it becomes our company. But again, same way, the biz dev, since it's raw and real entrepreneurship, this is my favorite when I get like a LinkedIn message or an email, like, I can help you grow your like, no, you can't.
No, you
No,
can't.
you can't. You don't know my business, right? And it drives me crazy when people send me LinkedIn messages and they clearly haven't done any research. That like, don't do that. That's such a no, right? But like, no, you can't. And like, you've got to be able to execute that. The other thing I love is I'll ask people if they've ever done a competitive sport.
Yeah, that's a good one actually. Athletes is like a really good flag.
Yep, because they know like how to produce, how to push past pain, like all of it, which is awesome. I want to ask final question for you. Like I know you get asked this a lot. It's a two-part question. So one is, what's next for you? And what's an experience with the business that you would like to have that you haven't had yet?
Oh wow, that's a great question. In terms of what's next for us, our vision is to really dominate beauty and be the platform where world-class brands are built. And so for us, that's not just private label, which is the world we play now, but we're also starting to do custom formulation with some really big names. And
Nice.
we're really excited about that. And so I think the next year beyond is really going to be focused on doubling down there and growing our customer base and just doubling down on what's already working for us. In terms of an experience that I haven't had that I would like to have with the business, oh my gosh, there's like so many random small ones I could probably think of. You know what I think would be so cool is I would love to share a stage one day with one of my customers and be able to tell the story of like how they've built their brand and how we've built Blanka and how it kind of comes together. Because I think there's such a beautiful story there. And we care so freaking much about the brands that are built on Blanka. We've built such strong relationships with them. And I'd love to like deepen that more publicly in some way. That's something that just like came to mind immediately, but I'm sure there's a lot of other things I'm excited about for next year and the years to come.
Well, let's bookmark that because maybe it'll be you and I.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Okay, I just manifested it.
Yes, let us manifest that. Okay, now we have to play Canadian trivia.
Oh, I've been scared about this.
Favorite part. No, it's not like a trivia. It's just like an association kind of like deal.
Okay. Right? I thought you were going to like ask me, you know, who the first prime minister was.
No. No one wants to hear that anyway.
No.
What we wanted, so we're going to, it's more like association trivia. Okay. But your opinion. All right. So I'll just rapid fire like 4 or 5 of these. Okay. Favorite Canadian actor or actress?
Oh, I love Ryan Gosling.
Ryan Gosling. I have a story about him. His cousin used to be my neighbor outside of Kingston. And one night he and Ava got stuck in a snowbank and our other neighbor pushed the car out and didn't even know who it was. And his wife was like, "Are you Andrew? That was Ryan Gosling." Ava Mendes. So, okay, Ryan Gosling. Okay. Favorite Canadian like musician, rock band. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I don't even know who would be my Canadian one. Okay, I'll tell you an embarrassing thing though. And I was on vacation a couple months ago in Bali with my best friend who's Canadian, and we watched the Nickelback documentary. I'm not saying they're my favorite by any means, but Nickelback got hated on so much, and it kind of makes you like have a bit more of a soft spot for them as a Canadian band. So I have some newfound respect for them. I will throw it out there, and I'm probably going to get like a lot of hate for even saying that.
No. I saw Nickelback live like 5 million years ago, like I don't know, a long time ago. Mine. I'm diehard Tragically Hip. I used to prep them for tours. So good. Did you see the Prime documentary?
No, I haven't.
Oh, sidebar. Okay, so like my PSA for that. So I used to prep the Tragically Hip for tours. So you know, back in like the late 90s. And my friend is the editor of the Phoenix Business Journal, and he used to photograph the hip for the Ottawa Citizen. So we're in our version of a book club watching all the episodes of the Tragically Hip documentary. And so then we meet up and have martinis and talk about it.
That's super cool. I love that. That's a great one. The Tragically Hip is like epic.
Yes, I have many stories. My good friend has been a long time love of dating one of the guys. Then Paul Langlois did the Paul Langlois band, and another like friend from high school is in that band, and they're about to do a Canadian tour. I could do a whole episode on the Tragically Hip.
Connecting all the dots. I love that.
I saw Bob Baker. That I won't even say that on the show. It's Raw and Real Entrepreneurship, but I won't get that raw and real. Anyway, okay. If you had to eat a Timbit, which one would it be?
Oh, the birthday cake one. I love the birthday cake one.
There is a birthday cake one?
Yeah, it's so good. It has like birthday sprinkles in it. And I feel like it's a limited edition one, but when I see it, I get it.
I didn't know.
Well, now you know.
Have you ever rolled up the rim to win and won something at Tim Hortons?
Yes, I definitely have, but it's all terrible things like a donut. Nothing good.
So when on Canadian trivia, and Tisha, our producer, will have to I don't know, I don't remember who. They want a barbecue. I'm like, you're the
Oh,
first.
that's a good one.
I'm like, you're the first person I know who's got a big prize. If you're listening and you're in India, Nigeria, one of our growth countries for the show, you have no idea what we're talking about, but you need to visit Canada because then you'll learn about it. Kaylee, thank you so much for being here. You rocked the Canadian trivia portion, friend.
Thank you. I was nervous for it. No, this was so great. I really appreciate this conversation. It's so nice, honestly, to not have a whole podcast just focused on the business and what we're building. And I love the raw and real component. So you're crushing it.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, everyone, hopefully the show has been impactful to you and inspiring. We would love a 5-star review. Just be very direct. 100% share the show and tag us on social. And I know this is shocking to everyone, but I am now on TikTok. I did so many episodes where I was like, data privacy, and now I'm actually on there. So I am committed to doing a video every day for 365 days. I'm 52. I don't feel like doing it. I'm freaking doing it. So you all need to follow me on TikTok. All right. So with that, God bless, go rock your day. And I will see you in the next episode of Raw and Real Entrepreneurship.